John Doe Radio Show. JDR News Live.
Human brain is made for thinking, not pubic experience. It's hardly a tinker toy or experimenting. Not fuming with drugs.
Why do we talk about marijuana? It's the single biggest drug that is a source of some confusion.
This is really about educating the public about the fact that marijuana is a less harmful drug.
Marijuana, that's to get high.
You can be as high as you want.
The prohibition of marijuana over the last 71 years has not actually prevented you from using marijuana.
You feel weak.
Closer to winning the war on drugs.
I do believe there have been some successes.
We will never arrest our way out of this problem.
Welcome to the John Doe Radio Show, JDR News Live, daily hanging out with you on a Monday. It's a Monday in the Mile High. Hopefully you had a fantastic Thanksgiving wherever it is that you spent Thanksgiving, whoever it is that you spent Thanksgiving with. Blessings to all, and to all, a fantastic night. Not a ton of news over the past few days over the Thanksgiving weekend. Obviously, everybody out eating turkey. My stomach just, oh my goodness. I think I've wrecked my stomach for all future endeavors of eating. No competition was had. Maybe a competition with myself to see how much actual ham and turkey I could eat during this whole damn break over the whole holiday weekend. We still even have a whole turkey downstairs that still needs to be cooked up in this mamma jamma. And stuffing basically a whole other Thanksgiving dinner that's sitting there waiting to get into my belly. So I actually don't know if I can eat any more turkey or ham. My stomach is just so foobar from stuffing it full this past weekend. Nothing like having good food. I've been through quite a bit during my time here on this planet Earth, and I'll tell you right now, one of the most depressing, horrible situations that you can be in as a person is not be able to afford your own goddamn food. You know what I'm saying? It happens. Hey, I got a question also for y'all out there. We've got a brand new stream encoder on the YouTube page, and it's telling me that our video resolution is 1092 by 614. I'm not exactly sure how to reset this. I'm going to have to look after the show, but it should sound better to you guys. Should have stereo. Should be at like 128 kbps. I think we can lift that up to like 196. So I've also got an extra rack plug-in that we can add to this whole mamma jamma, which makes it sound like a complete radio station where you got that low voice. You're listening to the John Doe Radio Show. Anyway, it's either here nor there. Like I said, hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Thanks for hanging out with us here on the John Doe Radio Show, JDR News Live, Monday through Friday, 6 o'clock, Mile High Time. YouTube.com/John Doe Radio is where we do it. Tell your friends about us. If you missed anything, make sure you holler at us on our website, johndoerad.io, or you can email me, johndoeradio@gmail.com. Let's do it! Today on JDR News Live, pressure to disband the DEA coming from not only the public, but people in office. Oregon pesticide rules, San Jose Cannabis rule changes. If we get to it, San Francisco Patient's Choice Award winners. And I also have on deck this really weird story about a extremely dangerous child molester who was just let out of jail and then thrown back into jail because of marijuana and growing weed. Why the fuck someone like this was even allowed out of prison, I have no clue. But how I feel about them kind of whammying him with pot rules, I don't know how I necessarily feel about that. We'll see if we get to that. Big thanks to you, the JDR Army. We couldn't do the John Doe Radio Show without you. You guys rock, kick ass. If you listen to us, you got feedback, holler at me, johndoeradio@gmail.com, or you can check us out on our Facebook page. The John Doe Radio Show Facebook page. Bike Holly has a Facebook page. He will be back with us as soon as possible, trying to work out something to where he's with us here on John Doe Radio. Trust me, when I say that I miss him like crazy, just as much, probably more than you do here on JDR. So holler at him. He's online, Michael Hawley, and obviously my page, Tim Martin. Also, big thanks to weedbiz.net, the sponsors here at JDR. Weedbiz.net. If you need yourself a grow solution, they've got it there for you. They're grow pods. Holler at them. Weedbiz.net. Tell them the John Doe Radio Show sent you, and they'll take care of you. We will have Stephen Bradley from weedbiz.net on the JDR show soon. He'll come on and talk to us about LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Basically used to be a police officer, and now he is no longer a police officer and completely understands the wrongs that the drug war has caused for some people out here. So we'll get with him and talk with him about what LEAP is all about and what he's been doing with LEAP over the years. Also, big thanks to our website creator, I guess I should say. Everybody, the lady that creates everything for us here at JDR for our website, all our images, the new shiz that we have out there, Jessica Trim. Awesome, fantastic person with an awesome company. Your Graphics on Facebook, URGRAFIX is where you can go. So holler at her, tell her the JDR sent you too. And last but not least, JDR News brought to you by the folks over at USACannabisConsulting.com. USACannabisConsulting.com. You need somebody that can help you navigate through this cannabis industry. If you need to get yourself regulated, you need a license, you need products put out, they can help you. Tell them John Doe sent you, or Michael Hawley. Kyle will take care of you over there at USACannabisConsulting.com. And let's see, where else are we at? Also, I got a real special thing coming here. I talked with our folks, our good friends, well, specifically one friend over at Incredibles. And what we're going to be doing is getting some Incredibles products to review for you guys. And specifically getting some products here that are going to be released for like the Christmas, like a holiday type products, seasonal type products. Just like it come out with like beers. What's that? There's one that's like Sam Adams or somebody has. What's it called? Like the horchata spice or something like that. Anyway, when I was still drinking, I had horchata spice. And it was a good beer. But it was only available during the holidays. Just the same thing with these cannabis products. And they'll be available for you in Colorado stores. We'll get a review out, and we're actually going to put some reviews on our website. We have a cool, awesome system. Just fantastic system here on our website, where if we're doing a strain review or we're doing a product review, there's a rating system. There's this cool, awesome setup that we have. That's the bottom line. So we'll write all about it, let you know what we think about them. And one of the big reasons why I've chose Incredibles and kind of reached out to Incredibles is because I would like to see, number one, where my body's at with using cannabis and how it affects me to the reported that is probably not cool for saying dangerous as heroin, which is pretty much these petitions go. They're ridiculous. Probably not going to hold a lot of change in the long run. I think it's the same thing for this DEA head being kicked out of office. It's more important that there's seven freaking members of Congress that have told Obama and told the administration that they would like to do away with the DEA head, and not just do away with the DEA head, because that's one thing, and that would be fantastic to do, but I don't, it's just going to be replaced with another asshat, period, end of story. The other argument that comes through is that we need to do away with pursuing cannabis and shoving that out of the drug war and not concentrating on that situation when the whole... Here's what's going to happen fast, and I already feel it happening, and what's going to happen quickly, is that for years and years and years, the DEA, obviously, we've talked about it many times here, the DEA has had their stepping stone and had their stepping ladder as cannabis, as marijuana. And this goes for all law enforcement agencies. If there's some sort of drug unit within a police department, like say they have an all crimes enforcement team, which I was arrested by, and it's just this extra squad of people that's funded to be able to go out and bust users and do raids and all that other crazy stuff. Well, in order for those people to do it, obviously they have to have money, and cannabis routinely has been that fund for them. And it's basically an endless fun because we're so low-hanging fruit. It's so easy to be able to grab a hold of one of us and run and take us, pilfer us for every cent that we have. Why wouldn't they do that? If they would like to stay in business, which it is, the DEA and the drug war is now a business model. If it didn't work as a business model, if money was being begged to be gotten from the feds, which it is, but not nearly as much as they gain off of busting you and I. The money that comes from you and I, bonuses that come from the feds, all this other craziness. In fact, just the other day, it was announced that the feds, not necessarily just the feds, overall, damn it, what's the word I'm looking for? Asset forfeiture is what I'm looking for. God dang it. Dang all asset forfeiture. More assets have been forfeited because of law enforcement in the United States than any felony crime that was committed where things were stolen. It's about $5 billion. $5 billion taken from American people in asset forfeiture, which is just insane because a lot of the time the person doesn't even necessarily have to be charged and definitely doesn't have to be committed in many cases for the government, for these agencies to be able to take what is yours. Take cash, take your home, whatever, your car. $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion is all on the other side of the table that crimes against people, things that have been stolen. Doesn't include petty crimes and other things like that. I'm sure that if you included petty crimes and just going into the store and stealing like a candy bar or stealing some food or whatever it is, and you get a petty offense for that, the numbers don't include that, which I'm sure if the numbers included that, probably over $5 billion that the American public has stolen from other people. But when you got corporations that are greedy like Walmart, and you have people that are super needy, some people think it's just their right to be able to walk out the door with, you know, a meal or some shiz like that. Maybe it is. Just kidding. But $5 billion in asset forfeiture across the United States is just an insane number. And we've talked about it, like I said before, the rules for people to be able to have to deal with that. The rules of being charged, the rules of them taking your money, just so different from each individual state to another. And then when the local agencies are able to work with the federal government, work with federal officers in order to be able to take more money from you, which is also allowed, they'll do that too. What's up, Molly? I'll make sure she's not just chewing up any gloves or shoes over here. She's been fine all day, hasn't bugged me, been doing her own thing, and then as soon as we start the show, she comes over and just starts biting my arm in my hand. What are you doing, baby girl? Sit. She'll chill out here in a minute. Chief of the agency stepped down in April. We're talking about the DA again. Under a cloud of scandal, the acting administrator since has courted ridicule for saying pot is probably not as dangerous as heroin, and more frequently, he provoked 100,000 petition signers and 7 members of Congress to call for his head after he called medical marijuana a joke. This fall, the administration earned a scathing rebuke from a federal judge over its creative interpretation of the law intended to keep it from harassing medical marijuana providers. Then the Brookings Institution issued a strongly worded report outlining the administrator's role in stifling medical research into medical uses of pot. Unfortunately for the DEA, this year isn't over yet. Last week, a group of 12 House members, led by Ted Lieu, a Democrat of California, wrote to the House leadership to push for a provision in the upcoming spending bill that would strip half the funds away from the DEA's cannabis eradication program and put that money toward programs that play a far more useful role in promoting the safety and economic prosperity of the American people. Domestic violence prevention and overall spending reduction efforts included. Each year, the DEA spends about $18 million in efforts with state and local authorities to pull up marijuana plants being grown indoors and outdoors. The program has been plagued by scandal and controversy in recent years. In the mid-2000s, it became clear that the overwhelming majority of marijuana plants netted by the program were actually ditchweed, or the wild, non-cultivated, non-psychoactive cousin of the marijuana that people smoke, aka hemp. You see, you may not know this. If you go to states like Nebraska, Iowa, even Montana, Kansas. A lot of those states grew a lot of hemp during World War II. The hemp for victory thing, pretty big deal at the time. So it goes to it's proof. What the fuck am I trying to say here? Growing that much hemp and having that much shiz wild, and then eradicating you're basically not going to do away with all of it. There was so much hemp here in the United States that seeds would, fly off wherever they flow off and land wherever they land, and then boom, they just pop up growing there. Maybe a bunch of seeds landed together. And see, here's the thing. Is cannabis was meant to be grown year after year. You know what I'm saying? Like seeds were supposed to be dropped, and then another plant pops up. It is possible, obviously, for the cannabis plant to go through seasons, goes through a season, reverts back to its flowering stage, and then continues on. If you're not harvesting right, you're not directing it right. One of the most human-influenced plants, one of the most bred plants that exists. But that's neither here nor there. I digress. Let's get into some cannabis cultivation talk and all this other goodness and shiz you don't even really need to know about if you're a cannabis cultivator. Unless you're trying to save a strain and you didn't take clones off of it, you harvested your whole mamma jamma, just leave a little branch there with a bud or two on it. Take you quite a few months for that mamma jamma sometimes to flip back over to flower, but you saved your plant. Anyway, back to hemp. More recently, overzealous marijuana eradicators have launched... by the way... what was that? Mid-2000, to be clear. Overwhelming. And no kidding, when they say overwhelming majority of the amount of plants that were... See, here's the thing. Think about this. California is its own massive big spot, and it's exception to the rule when it comes down to growing cannabis and the amount of cannabis that's there. I mean, it's just outstanding. There's nobody throughout the United States that can compare to the amount of weed that is actually grown outside California. The sheer size of the state is just outstanding. It's crazy. Also, one of the only places that, I don't know, I don't really mean this when I say this, but as far as size, California, like I said, unmatches anybody for planting outdoors. So if you're going to California, there's not really other states where people are planting massive crops of cannabis. You know what I'm saying? Like the high quality cannabis and outdoors is few and far between to find as compared to how it is in California. But the thing is, in a lot of these states where it is hard to find outdoors, they grew hemp for the hemp for victory, all that other stuff. Law enforcement's not going to see the difference between fantastically grown weed and hemp that just pops up and is grown in patches. So think about the rest of the United States. 99% of the rest of the United States, police going after those aren't going to hit almost ever the high quality grows that you can see in like Northern California. They're going to be hitting stuff that's, possibly that's probably planted by Mexican cartels. May not be the highest quality grown there, but also at the same time, if you have people that are just walking, people in small towns, small areas, rural parts, as they're walking, they come across a forest or something like that, hunters, they come across a bunch of weeds. That person calls in to report it, and maybe it's just something that's popped up because the weed is feral. Pops up every year. It's just a bunch of hemp. You can't really smoke that. Is the DEA or are the local government, local policing agencies going to just ignore that? No. Hell no. Not when they can get bonuses for going and cutting down that weed. Not when they can spend time going out, hiking around, beautiful outside, outdoors. But first of all, they're going to... That wasted time and wasted energy, they can't just let it go. Jesus Christ, I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about here. I'm trying to get to a point that's making no sense. So why don't we just move on to this damn thing? My point was, Jesus criminy, how much can we waste money and waste energy and waste time? I don't have the numbers in front of me. I wish I did right now. It is where I'm basically trying to get you to realize is that how many plants are taken from the rest of the United States. and how much a waste those are and how much those are feral. I'm talking like 80% of plants that are grabbed here in the United States are wild ditchweed. Last year, the DEA spent an average of roughly $4.20, yes, really, for each marijuana plant it successfully uprooted. In some states, that cost taxpayers approached $60 per uprooted plant. The program has also proven to be ineffective. The idea behind pulling up pot plants is to reduce the supply of marijuana, thereby reducing its use. In 1977, 2 years before the program's introduction, less than a quarter of Americans said they tried pot, according to a Gallup poll. By 2015, after 36 years of federal marijuana eradication efforts, the share of Americans ever trying pot nearly doubled to 44%. Given that marijuana is legal in some form or another in nearly half of the nation's states, some lawmakers are saying enough is enough. The seizure of these plants has served neither an economic, nor public safety, nor health-related purpose, Lou and his colleagues wrote. Its sole impact has been to expend limited federal resources that are better spent elsewhere. The letter writers note that the provision to strip $9 million in funding from the program passed on voice vote earlier in the year without any opposition from either party. They urge leadership to include a provision in a must-pass spending bill later this year. Lou doesn't want to stop there. Next year, he intends to introduce a measure to eliminate the program completely. He said earlier this year whether that actually happens will depend on how the year's measures fare during upcoming spending bill negotiations. And if you don't know, if you're not aware of it, most of the things that happen, or most of the money for programs, goes into these huge spending bills. Like, we're talking, I don't even know how many topics are actually a part of these spending bills, but sometimes it's just hundreds and hundreds. It's a ton of things. And if you include something like, we're going to take money from the DEA to be able to eradicate plants, all these bonuses, all these grants that we give you to go up in your choppers, your airplanes, to go out running through the woods, all this money, we're going to do away with it. That's part of this huge spending bill. And if there's enough people that get together that are like, you're not going to do this shit, we're keeping this money in there, and in order to get our way, we're going to not vote for this spending bill and keep stalling and keep causing problems until you agree with us. Which is ridiculous, but that's how it works. Especially with our government. Fantastic people running our government. Care about you and I all day, every day. Scientist presses Oregon for stopgap pesticide testing of marijuana. Also, one of the other reasons that I've chose Incredibles as something that we review and a product that I personally would like to get into a little bit more. The issue with pesticides here in Colorado has been huge. Obviously, so many different companies running into problems with testing positive and having their, and I guess it's not a ton of companies, but I really don't think a lot of these companies have been brought to light. Their test results, I don't think that they've been brought to light, and I don't think a lot of this stuff is being tested right now. To be completely 100% honest with you, I don't think the Met is really cracking down a lot on it, other than them seeing where these tests have been positive, where there's been an extraordinary amount. Basically, if something is brought to the Marijuana Enforcement Division and laid right in front of them in their laps, that's when they've been quick to jump at this. The other reason why I believe that there's not a lot of testing going on here in Colorado and not really a lot of people following the rules is because there's nobody out there that can actually test for this shiz. I know of one company right now. By the way, Can Labs here in Colorado was closed down over the holiday weekend. A press release went out that said the owners were basically stopping because of the violations, because of how many people had talked about Can Labs in a bad context. Basically, they destroyed their name. Longest running lab here in Colorado, biggest lab, quote unquote, here in Colorado. I don't know if they were the biggest, seeing how many violations they have and how shitty work that they actually did. But the company announced that it was stopping its procedures here in Colorado. There are other states where this company owns labs too, by the way, not just Can Labs. I don't have those names sitting in front of me. But supposedly this new ownership, this new board, wants to move forward on recreating its brand and partnering with another lab here in Colorado at some point in time to be able to do what they said they were going to do, fix the violations that they violated, and get back to actually doing business and get back to being responsible, productive members of our industry. Because right now, when it comes down to it, those tests are one of the most important things that we're facing in the cannabis industry right now. If we can get past this testing issue, which I've always thought for the longest time, since we read about it in the rules, when rules first got introduced for legalization, I thought it was going to be the biggest game changer in cannabis that you'd seen anywhere. Not only inside of our industry, but also outside the industry with these companies that are selling pesticides, that are making products. As we mentioned last week, these companies are trying to get an exception to the rule when it comes down to federal regulations. Right now, they can't say that you could use this product on marijuana because it's licensed and regulated by the feds, and the feds are not going to be okay with that. But they're basically trying to get an exception to the rule to say, hey, this is allowed to be used on cannabis. Read the story last week. And once that exception to the rule goes into play, first of all, I think some of us like to think that we're a lot bigger of an industry than we are, which we're not when it comes down to the agriculture. Think about it. Compare the cannabis industry to the agricultural industry as a whole, whether it be corn or wheat or whatever, or maybe just growing flowers. It's small. The market is just extraordinarily small. But I think the agricultural companies can see where it's going to be absolutely huge someday. The amount of money that's going to be put into this industry and be put into growing is just astounding. It's staggering when you sit down and think about it. Cannabis will someday become the number one crop once it's legalized federally. And just think if it was legal worldwide for hemp to be grown, and we as Americans didn't shit on every other country and try and pressure other countries into conforming to our drug laws and conforming to our drug rules, considering hemp as a smokable, get-high product. Just think about that. When it comes to time that we no longer shit on those people, that hemp becomes this huge, massive industrial product, in my eyes, it's got to be a bigger crop than actual smokable cannabis. I mean, it's got so many more uses than just sitting down smoking or just sitting down making a medicine from it if you're a pharmaceutical company. Just the amount of money wow. You can't even really wrap your mind about it when you start to think about it. How much cash can be involved in this industry if everybody were to legalize this? It's freaking insane. But anyway, those agricultural industry product makers, pesticide companies, nutrient companies, all that good stuff, I think they are seeing what it could be, and I think we're going to see a lot of changes here in the next year. I'm not even saying 2 years. I think in the next 6 months you're going to see some crazy changes when it comes down to it. And the only reason why we haven't seen them already is because the feds have moved so slow on it. The feds are... last thing that they want to do is make a positive change when it comes to cannabis and including cannabis into the mix. But just as we read on that last article, on the last article, senators, congressmen, so many different elected officials are coming through and saying, look, this is just stupid. We can't be doing this anymore. Public outcry is becoming louder than we can deal with. Can't just sweep this issue under the carpet anymore. We just can't lie to these people anymore. We're not going to get elected. The stories we're telling are absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, quick change coming. And just think about it. You may think if you're in here in Colorado or you're in California, some other cannabis state, you may have missed the bus locally. It may have been something that you didn't get into it at the ground floor. Business could have been huge right now, a multi-million-dollar company. It just somehow you missed the bus. And it's a little bit harder right now, especially in Denver, when you can't even go and buy a retail cannabis permit. You can't even open a store technically here in Denver. Still situations like that is you have to deal with, and I understand that may be a sign of, hey, you missed the bus. Trust me, I get it. But we're just starting. Just starting, man. There's one state, Oregon, getting their shit together, and going to be the second state. But just one state currently that has rules that the government can kind of get along with, that work locally. Industry just absolutely booming, and that's here in Colorado. We can't even include California into this mix because, number one, they haven't had solid rules for years and years and years. The government, the feds can't take it seriously. There's just so much varied differences throughout California when it comes down to it. And that's going to change next year when the state regulates cannabis as a whole overall. Local municipalities allowed to make changes. I have a story about that, San Jose. But like I said, even California, they may have a more monetary gain system. It may be a more, what am I looking at? There's a lot more money, obviously, a lot more weed in California. But things there could change quicker than they could here in Colorado. If you have a regulatory system that's, see, California, they haven't had regulated cannabis, haven't had legalization. So that whole situation could change with them. Putting all your marbles or putting all your eggs into that basket in California is kind of a dangerous thing right now. A little bit more dangerous than it is here in Colorado because we've had regulation for a couple years now. We've worked into it. People are used to it. There may be some big changes, but it's probably not going to be enough unless the whole system countrywide gets slammed down. Probably not going to see too many problems here in Colorado with running a risk of investing into a cannabis business. In California, it's a little bit different of a story. In other states that are still making those changes because they're so early on in this program and don't have a regulated recreational system. Who knows what could happen when that system does get put into place? Say, for instance, our buddy Dredd. He's been quite vocal about this and talked about it, so I think I can probably talk about it. He moved out to California. He's a grower here in Colorado. Moved out to California, was given a job by a company out in San Jose that was expecting to have a huge warehouse that opened up next year. As we'll read about here in a second, a lot of changes have happened in San Jose. The things that were supposed to happen haven't exactly gone through. This company isn't opening this spot, so Dredd's got to move on because there's just not room for him inside this company. The things that he said he was going to be given aren't going to be there because regulation didn't allow for that type of situation. At least that's how I understand it. And if not, that's an example. Insert anybody's name here. It doesn't have to be just Dredd or whatever. But you make changes, you lift your life up, move to a place that's not necessarily regulated fully. It's a gamble. It really is. God, today is a ramble day of rambles. I hope you're enjoying or at least trying to follow along here. With just weeks to go before December deadline for compliance, medical marijuana providers are still balking, at some of San Jose's rules, and city officials are offering to ease them. Some of San Jose's. You know, your brain just goes on autopilot sometimes, or at least mine does. That's one of those situations. San Jose's rules sounds too much like Son of Sam. 19 pot providers, you don't give a shit. 19 pot providers have been seeking to meet San Jose's regulatory requirements by December 18th. The rules adopted in June of 2014 restrict pot stores to select industrial and commercial areas away from schools and parks and impose a host of security, tax payment, and other requirements. Dispensaries that fail to meet the requirements by the deadline face closure. One rule in particular requiring pot stores to demonstrate that their marijuana is cultivated locally and not from collectives around the state remains a sticking point. City officials plan to ask City Council to ease the rules Tuesday, that's tomorrow, allowing another 5 months for shops to sell through products obtained from a third-party vendors and letting San Jose pot clubs buy and sell to one another. And that's the one thing I've been a little bit jealous of California for years and years and years. Is because they kind of have that Wild West system that's stuck for a little while. Like here in Colorado, at first you could be you didn't necessarily even have to be a caregiver. You just grow weed. Throw that shiz into a duffel bag, walk into the nearest dispensary, throw the duffel bag on the table, show your product off to the people that were buying it at that dispensary. And if they so enjoyed or it was good, they'd throw you down cash and buy your product. Can't do that anymore for obvious reasons. Have to have a license, have to go through millions of hurdles and hoops to be able to get that done. But in California, it's a little bit different. It's a bit dang old, Here, let me sell you this. You're gonna buy from here. Basically, no vertical integration. But that is changing, as we just said. Angelique Gaeta, an assistant to the city manager who oversees the medical marijuana program, wrote in a staff report that the proposed changes will provide those medical marijuana collectives that are working their way towards registration with greater flexibility and opportunity for success. But the mayor says that the proposal needs more study, and the marijuana providers say the olive branch doesn't go far enough and are planning a city hall rally Tuesday to drum up support for a ballot measure that would let city voters consider looser rules in 2016. Oakland-based attorney James Anthony says, "I don't care what the hell is motivating the mayor." He helped organize Sensible San Jose, a political committee that crafted the June 2016 ballot measure to replace the city ordinance with more relaxed regulations. He said, "We are going to rouse the troops to generate public awareness. It's time to give up on the city and go to the voters." The current rules require San Jose medical pot collectives to cultivate their own weed, either on site or at a single off-site location within Santa Clara County or neighboring counties. Gaeta said, "This vertical integration model helps track the weed from seed to sale to prevent diversion to kids, black market sales, and find the source of bad batches of marijuana." Vertical integration, it's not everywhere in California. It's basically what I was saying with that before. I think a lot of places, once they started to see that Colorado's vertical integration program was something that was a great starting point, they decided to try and move to this. The problem is, the state of California, I don't think they can't reap the benefits of vertical integration unless you're all doing it. You know what I'm saying? Unless everybody's involved. If you're not involved with vertical integration, and you have access to any given product that anybody out there grows, it's kind of a little bit more of an unfair advantage for your company to deal with if you're in another part of California, which is fine. And like I said before, I wasn't a huge proponent of vertical integration when it first came out. I thought it was a horrible idea. Having businesses and having companies be able to grow their own and sell on a wholesale level, I thought was the American way. That's how it should be. Businesses should be able to open and do what they want. And I still feel that. But here in Colorado, we were so successful with keeping everything slow, not having products that weren't supposed to be in, or bad products, I should say. Not having bad products ruin the system and not having bad people and bad businesses ruin our system. That's where vertical integration came into play and was fantastic. It went away. We've done away with it since then. There are currently companies that are setting themselves up to be massive wholesalers to not only stores here in Colorado, but when it comes down to it, these companies are going to be some of the first people to be able to sell nationwide. They're going to be set up for it a little bit quicker than the quote-unquote vertical integrated type situations. It is just better in the long run to start off vertically integrated and also prevent people from outside the community from coming in and completely blowing up their program. And maybe that's a good thing, and it is. In a lot of times, I kick myself in the balls so much when I talk about this because it does. It hurts. It's not how I necessarily feel about everything. You know, my libertarian values, it just go completely against that, what I'm saying right now. Basically, vertical integration, now it's a good thing. I know, it pains me to say it, but because we've seen it work so well, I would suggest it for other places because we're betting too much. We have too much on the line to be able to go all in and then have willy-nilly crazy products that are bad products, or more so, really what it comes down to is having bad companies and bad businessmen, people that are going to launder money for drug cartels, launder money for themselves, send products to out of state. It's just a better idea right now. If we didn't have such horrible regulations federally, if it wasn't that marijuana was looked at like this horrible product that's killing people left and right and shouldn't be allowed, industry shouldn't be allowed. If we weren't facing that situation, it would be a completely different thing coming out of my mouth. That the industry, demand, open market would determine everything that everybody does. And the stumbles along the way, we would fix that as we go. But the problem is, we're just putting too much on the line to bet that somebody's not going to stumble enough to where, and screw up bad enough to where there's not a federal agency that comes in to park their couch, or a congressman, or a president, or legislator, whoever it is. We do not want them to have any excuse to come in and just completely shove this whole program down. Whoops, I didn't mean to push that button. Damn it. I just opened a program I didn't really want to open. Another program with another encoder on it that hopefully doesn't fark up this encoder. Where was I at in this San Jose story? No, I do not want to open that. Okay, back to San Jose. Pot clubs, by the way, if you're with us live, got any questions, holler at me. I know the majority of people, heavy 90% majority of people that listen to the JDR, listen to us on our podcast. But if you're in the chat, you got questions, or I screw up something, you want to make something clear, holler at me. Pot clubs say the rule makes it hard to keep up with demand since it takes months to harvest the weed. They add that the rule, talking about vertical integration here, also makes it difficult for stores to offer edibles such as ice cream and cookies that come from collectives around the state and are preferred by patients who don't want to smoke the marijuana. Everything I just talked about, vertical integration, things we ran into here in Colorado, it's not a horrible idea. For the time being, not a horrible idea. A lot of these products that people have created, have put forward, they're given a chance to test them on a small market, test them in, one or two clubs, and then perfect their product and then get it out statewide, whatever it is. 90% of those products, edibles or extracts or whatever it is, a good majority of those products are going to fall way short of what some of the better products that have been around for years and years and years, gone through the testing, jumped through the hoops. I know we see it here in Colorado. I know you see it in California, that some of the lesser known products, some of the lesser celebrated products are not in every single store. But when they, basically, if you have a good product, you put it in one store, create a huge demand for it. Vertical integration can help you do that. Helping that store not only sell and bring in new customers because it's the only place that you can get this product, but also, like I said, that product being able to test in a small group of people, hearing feedback from that small group of people, hype being created, and then when vertical integration goes away, that company's allowed to explode. They've already been through the process. They haven't tripped, haven't farked themselves up, made mistakes, all this other good stuff. And if they have, they made it on a smaller scale. I don't know. This shit's coming out of my mouth is so against what I really truly believe for anything else other than pot. We just have to be careful. Otherwise, we're going to lose everything we have. City officials said the proposed changes would ease the burden of meeting demand under the new model. In addition to allowing the shops to transfer pot among themselves and dispense weed, they have on hand from third-party vendors for 5 months after the December 18th deadline. Other suggested revisions include allowing collectives to manufacture marijuana at their dispensaries or an off-site location with more space. And why this is a huge article, too, and another big news story is because this is the model that's going to carry from place to place to place. It's what's carried here. It's probably what's going to happen in California. In the meantime, I don't know once legalization goes through in California if this is going to be the case, if they're going to include vertical integration. I don't think they actually will. I don't think statewide that they're going to regulate every single store to vertically integrate, but it's possible that they're going to allow these cities and counties, municipalities, to be able to make that decision for you. So if you want to open a spot, say in San Jose, you may not be able to open it. Here's the deal. It's San Jose. Say you're outside of San Jose and have a product that you can sell to a bunch of stores. You wouldn't necessarily be able to sell that product in San Jose. Anyway, God, there's so many rules here. My mind's moving a million miles an hour on this. 10 million things flying through it. It gets complicated. It really does. The new proposed rules that they say should be put in would allow collectives to manufacture marijuana at their dispensaries or an off-site location with more space, allow the transportation of marijuana from one site to another from 6 a.m. to midnight, decrease the length of time surveillance video must be stored from 90 days to 30 days to reduce dispensary costs, require collective owners and employers to wear badges issued by the police to show they've been fingerprinted and have a criminal background check. I do not definitely agree with that. Disqualify collective owners or employees convicted of unlawful use of firearm in the last 10 years. With the city council poised to defer the decision Tuesday and only 3 council meetings left this year, it's unclear when the elected leaders will take up the issue again. But medical marijuana advocates aren't waiting for the council to decide on changes. The rally Anthony plans in front of City Hall on Tuesday will protest the tweaks to what San Jose calls impossible medical pot ordinance, to what he calls the San Jose ordinance as impossible. He likened it to rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. The ballot measure Anthony drafted makes vertical integration optional and lifts city zoning restrictions on where pot shops can operate, but still requires them to register and pay taxes. It was also suggested limiting personal use marijuana cultivation to indoors only within a 50 square foot space to address growing concerns over backyard pot gardens that invite thieves. She suggested, one of these people that we talked about previously in the article, Gata, suggested creating a city medical marijuana division similar to the gaming control to oversee the rules. Problem is when we invite a regulatory agency like that into play, they say that they've got to... What are you doing, Molly? Jesus criminy, she's almost jumping on me over here. It's not like we're having a tough enough time today or enough distractions that we got to have the dog jumping up on us. Like I said, the problem with... where was I? The problem with these regulatory agencies is not that they make up horrible rules necessarily. That's one of the obvious reasons why I'm not necessarily for, these independent regulatory agencies, local regulatory agencies. Even the Med here in Colorado, Marijuana Enforcement Division, that's a perfect example of how much money is paid for licenses and fees. I mean, it's an extraordinary amount of money that's paid into these, specifically Marijuana Enforcement Division, to be able to regulate, and they say to pay their staff, all that other craziness. It's more money than they need. And time again, I think they've kept the expenses a little bit under wraps more here in Colorado. But before, we ran into a situation to where these asshats were like buying brand new cars and expensive desk chairs and desks that don't belong in any government agency. Just literally misusing the funds that they're given to regulate cannabis here in Colorado. And the reason why they're allowed to misuse those funds, or we're allowed to misuse those funds, is because the amount of money that's going in to that system to be able to regulate it. And that's fine if we have a regulatory system. I understand that we would need possibly a situation like the Marijuana Enforcement Division is created, like this regulatory agency we're talking about in San Jose. I can understand how it's needed, but the problem is there's too many harms that come from it that outweigh the creation of it. You know what I'm saying? The abuse of money, the abuse of power is just so ridiculous, is so over the top because, and this is period, end of story, cannabis is a bastardized product. We have a situation here to where it's been illegal for so long. It's been shat on for so long. We have 90 years of a drug war that we fought, lies about it. So that equals dangerous product equals tons of money to be able to regulate it. We have to keep it under control, and that's just going to take so many people. It's a ridiculous situation that we get ourselves into, and it goes hand in hand with overspending and misspending in the government as a whole. And my values, like I said, we've been talking about here, that I don't necessarily agree with this, and it hurts me to say this or whatever. Still, bottom line, when it comes down to it, we can do all this, but we can do it without abusing it. We can have regulatory situations. We can have officers checking up on these things to make sure that people are following the rules. I understand that. I understand that there's a process that we have to go to prove who we are and to prove our success. And it'll happen. It's happened here in Colorado. But when it comes down to it, we don't need, and it should not be included, a situation to where we're allowing the Marijuana Enforcement Division, we're allowing regulators to overly control us and to be given, specifically what I'm talking about here, more money than they know what to do with. Basically penalizing people that want to get into this industry, like we talked about before, like in New Jersey and other places where it's like $5 million bond that you have to produce. I mean, that's just insane. That's stupid. The only reason why is because you're so scared of cannabis that you can't fairly and accurately represent these companies on a regulatory level. And that kills me, and it pisses me off so much that we allow that to happen, not only with cannabis, but through almost every other thing in our government. Every other situation that we hand over regulation for our government is just overtaxed, overregulated, and when it comes down to it, too much money being wasted in these programs. Whether it's to line the pockets of the people that are a part of these programs, to put more money into the government's hands to be able to misspend on programs. The number one issue with that we talked about, like here in Colorado, with the tax refund that the people here in Colorado voted to allow. Basically, we raised too many taxes. When people went to go vote on the measure, it was said that we were going to raise this amount. We ended up raising more, so the ability to be able to give that money back to the people. Hey, what are you doing? I leave her alone for 2 seconds and she starts chewing on everything. And it's just during the show, too. She doesn't do it when I'm sitting here playing video games or looking up news reports or whatever, working on the house. None of that shit. She's perfectly awesome. And she used to be, we're talking about Molly the dog here, she used to just lay right in front of me. Pass out while I'm talking to myself. But now, she's decided that it is her job for this time that we spend together to be able to go ape shiz and distract me as much as possible. Anyway, God damn it, what was I saying? Bottom line, beating a dead horse in this situation, I think when it comes down to it, is that we can't be allowing these people to turn us upside down and shake us for every last cent that we have. That's one of my biggest gripes about regulation. At least in places where they have reasonable regulation. Other places, not so much reasonable. Advocates gave the city 6 suggestions for revisions to the ordinance, but they say Gaeta recommended only 2 of them to the city council, allowing marijuana transfers and off-site manufacturing. Gaeta wouldn't recommend allowing medical pot shops to receive products from collectives around the state or allowing outdoor cultivation. Without these changes, critics say medical weed sales will be forced to go underground in the black market. A drop in city-sanctioned pot sales could spur a decline in revenue for San Jose. A measure approved by voters in 2010 allowed the city to charge a 10% tax on all medical marijuana transactions. San Jose has collected more than $19 million over the last 5 years. A lobbyist with Forest Consulting LLC, representing 6 medical marijuana shops, said the city treats pot businesses unfairly. Like I said, a lot of these reasons, obviously, why they've been treated unfairly is because we just are in a bastardized industry. They know we're not dangerous. They know this is something that we should be moving forward with, but they're just digging their heels so far into the dirt. And what's even more disturbing is they're doing this when it comes down to our justice system. They're doing this with people that are persecuted and prosecuted. I mean, this is one thing for businesses to be pilfered and for regulations for these businesses to be hard and tough. It's another thing for people to have their entire lives ruined off of this. And the only reason why your life is being ruined is because there's just some asshat who doesn't think that you should be allowed to smoke and thinks that it's just this extremely dangerous thing. And what you're doing is more dangerous than what I'm going to do and put you in jail. And that does not match up whatsoever. We all know that. It is a crime in itself. And I've always thought that once we legalize, once we reverse these rules, and it's going to happen slow enough to where this is probably not going to be a possibility. But I honestly think that a lot of these people that were put in charge of the drug war, that have persecuted us as a whole for so many years, need to answer to that. Need to be brought up on charges. Need to have money taken from them. Basically have their knees clubbed with the billy club and sent on their way. No, I'm just kidding. No violence actually in this. But it is. It's such a outrageous situation at this point in time that we're staring at, seeing how cannabis toxicity versus alcohol versus all the other drugs, seeing how much we've been lied to, how bastardized of a system that we have. Bastardized. That's the word of the day. System that we currently have. How can you not look at it as something these people are doing is criminal? I mean, you have some states where you can go to prison for life for making hash or making an edible, and then you have a state like here in Colorado to where you're selling weed inside of a club and you just get charged with a misdemeanor. I mean, the widely varying distances between one place and another, and the way that those people think in the more harsh place, I mean, it's insane. And those people need to be punished for it because they know. It's not like they don't know that this is wrong. It's not like that they don't know the drug war is an actual failure. They do know this. And they turn the other way. They don't care. They're not sitting in prison. They may not have family members, which I'm sure they do, who have been affected by the cannabis drug war. Or the drug war just in general. It's not just cannabis that these things are happening like they are. It's not just cannabis that people are going above and beyond to punish people for. God, I just get stuck on that thought once I start thinking about it, of how horrible some of these people are and how horrible of a system we've created for ourselves. And we sit here and we like to call ourselves a free country. And we are in the United States. But we have such a black eye. And it's a country that I can be proud of, but I can still say we're working on things. The conversation about how people are, it's the same thing with gay marriage or terrorism or Donald Trump or any of that. I don't see how that mindset still exists this day and age. How people can be so backwoods and so hateful to other people that they would literally rather just kill them. Like the Planned Parenthood situation here in Colorado Springs. You know, it sucks. It's one thing to know that there's people out there in the world that'll do this that are not necessarily responsible and are just vagrants or whatever you want to describe that person as. It's not somebody that's very successful in life. Period. End of story. Doesn't have a good job. Doesn't do anything with their life. Kind of describing me here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm talking about politicians, people in power that still feel this way and still have these thoughts. It just blows me away and sickens me that we're still at this point in time here in the United States and in this country where we have to face that. It's crazy. All right, how far are we at it? Hour 5. I think we're about done for the show here today. Check the chat room, see if you got anything. Nah, nothing. I do have, actually, let's go to this one. This is an interesting story. This is from the Morning Call. A convicted pedophile described by prosecutors as the scariest sex offender this community has ever seen when he was sentenced for stalking a 13-year-old boy who lived in his Allentown street, pleaded guilty Monday to growing marijuana. And this is the most farked up picture that I have ever seen of anybody. You can go to my Facebook page, Tim Martin. And I just posted it up right before the show started. And I think, just as I was talking about how people are unfair and punished unjustly and da-da-da-da-da. You know, there are some people that you could just look at their pictures and tell that they're not right in the head. This is one of them. There is not a more foobar-looking person on this planet. Period. I don't care what you say. There are foobar-looking people. There's crazy deformities that people have, but just the combination of creepiness and asshattery that this person possesses, it's just scary. It's like not far enough off base or deformed or like alien. It's like a normal, weird, I don't know. Anyway, it's hard to describe something we can't show you here on radio. Clyde Ruppel, who's 74 years old, was sentenced to 9 to 18 months in Lehigh County Jail on possession of marijuana and possession of drug paraphernalia charges. Ruppel, who had been imprisoned for about a year, had earlier been sentenced to 1 to 2 years in the stalking charge, was also granted immediate parole by Ford as part of the plea agreement on the drug case. Dude. So basically, this dude getting a more harsh sentence when it comes down to it for growing cannabis and being a part of cannabis than for stalking this young boy. They call him the scariest. They call him the scariest motherfucker. Yet he still got out of jail in less than a year. Another point in our whole system where our justice is just absolutely skewed and absolutely screwed. And another obviously glaring example of how this is criminal, that we can't be doing this to people. Ruppel was up for parole in the stalking case on December 16th. His attorney, Kate Smith, told Ford, and granting early parole would allow him to remain in county jail to serve his sentence on the marijuana case. During his sentencing in the stalking case, Ford sided with the public defenders who said the community would be safer if Ruppel is closely supervised by a probation officer in Lehigh County. Allentown police said Ruppel, a registered sex offender, watched a neighbor boy for 2 years and left him love letters attaching a peach-colored rose to each one. How does someone like this stay around for years and years? Jesus criminy. And we care about weed when there's shit like this happening. Authorities said Ruppel would sit in his car in the parking lot of the apartment building and watch the boy and sometimes follow him to and from school. The boy's father said he told him several times to stay away from his son. As part of and see if he does anything to this guy, he's probably going to be punished worse than this sex offender is going to be punished. Which doesn't make a single lick of sense. As part of the investigation, Allentown police served a search warrant on late last year at the dude's apartment in the 1400 block of Hamilton Street. There they discovered, ow, she just bit me on my foot. Come on, Molly. We're almost done. In court Monday, Ruppel's attorney said he used marijuana for medical purposes after he suffered a back injury about 3 decades ago. As part of his plea to possession of marijuana and possession of drug paraphernalia charges, a count of possession with intent to deliver was withdrawn. He is a registered sex offender with the state's Megan Law website. Prosecutors say Ruppel has convictions dating back to 1965. This is just mind-blowing. What the fuck is wrong with us? Has prosecutions dating back to 1965 for crimes against children, including a 1995 case in which he raped an 8-year-old boy with cerebral palsy, as well as the child's 9-year-old brother. Holy shiitake guacamole. According to court records, he pleaded guilty in 96 to raping 2 boys in 12 incidents in the public parks in Doylestown. During his sentencing, a judge described Ruppel as a classic pedophile before sentencing to state prison for 6 to 15 years. Jesus Christ. You kidding me? I honestly don't know how to react to this story or react to these type of situations. Because deep down inside, I just want to explode. It's like you have an atomic bomb down in your gut. And your brain, reading this story or knowing about situations like this, is just constantly shaking its head. And over out of the corner of your eye, you have this nuclear option, but you know that it's not going to do anything. You know that it's just going to make you look like an asshat if you blow up and start freaking out about this. Don't go about it in responsible ways. But when you read a story like this, when you have a situation like this, your brain punches that nuclear option and it makes you want to explode. You gotta explode. It doesn't make any sense to you how a person like this can be in the public, much less pretty much be facing sentences for cannabis, facing this more time for cannabis than raping a bunch of kids. We want to send messages to our kids of like right and wrong. How can we have these situations to people that are not only raping kids, but raping adults who are only getting 5 to 15 years in prison? You can get 5 years for just possession in some states for having less than a gram. People going to rape for a couple of years, 15 years. Well, you got a person like the tuna himself, Robert Platshorn, who went to prison for 29 years. He didn't rape any kids. He didn't kill anybody. He just brought in a bunch of weed on ships from other countries. Jesus criminy. It's scary that we face these situations. It really is. It's scary that we still have to deal with this and we still are having these conversations. The fact that I'm talking to you about this story right now is a failure in our society to be able to take care of our priorities correctly. It's disgusting. Take away the whole cannabis part about this and saying, hey, this is wrong. This person shouldn't be punished for less time with cannabis, period. This person shouldn't even be out in public. Plain and simple. God, our justice system's so completely foobar. Ay, ay, ay. And on that note, I'm going to chillax. I'm going to go grab some grub. Try and calm down my stomach a little bit. Not only the dog distraction, but, God, I'm telling you, man, I think I just foobarred my stomach this past week, eating too much. It's like bloated. So all I want to do is just lay down in the corner and start rocking back and forth. I'll hop in a hot shower. I think I got the meat sweats a few times this weekend, too. This is a turkey and a ham. Thanks for hanging out with us on JDR News Live. I'm Tim Martin. Our shows are available on our website, johndorad.io. So all you got to do is head to www.johndorad.io. It's a pretty cool website. Fits fantastically in with our name, John Doe Radio. All you got to do is put that dot in between the I and the O. Giveaways and reviews coming here on JDR News Live Daily in the near future. Maybe we could get Bike to join us when we actually do the reviews. Hang out with us for a couple hours or an hour or something like that. Anyway, shout out to Bike. Also, shout out to our sponsors, people that make the show possible, weedbiz.net. Your Graphics on Facebook, holler at them. If you need a website to be made for yourself, you need some sort of graphic design, Your Graphics, grafix.com, or on Facebook. And last but not least, JDR News Live brought to you by our good friends over at USACannabisConsulting.com. USACannabisConsulting.com. I think they also have the website USACannabis.consulting. After we did johndorad.io, they were like, hey, I wonder if there's a .consulting domain. And there is. So you head to it, USACannabis.consulting or USACannabisConsulting.com. I'd like to sit and hang with you a little bit more, but I don't have a lot more to say. I think what we're going to do is start streaming on Twitch, too. We might just set an open stream on Twitch that's going nonstop with all the JDR shows, starting with the very first shows that we've done, and kind of build an audience over there. Because if you remember the old AOL chat rooms, there's just a ton of people that were in these chat rooms, always full, different topics with each one of them. And I know Twitch is, people think of it mostly as a gaming type site, but they've tried to change that more and more here recently. I've viewed a couple podcasts that were on that show. It's just a fantastic place. Tons and tons and tons and tons of people. Tons of people on these sites. And I mean, you got people playing like Mario games or just doing a small podcast, and there's like 500 people just chilling in the chat room, having conversations. And that's mostly what we would want to do. We want to get more people together, more people to conversate, more people in our chat, more feedback, not only helps us as JDR to be able to better our product and bring you awesomeness, but it also helps the community. Having more people involved in as many locations as we possibly can, talking about cannabis, talking about reform, having conversations, positive conversations about it, it's going to help move this whole damn thing forward. All right, that's going to do it. Until we meet again tomorrow, I'm Tim. See ya.
Radio show is produced by Charlie Stash Entertainment. The John Doe Radio Show programming is not limited by information on agriculture subjects and is intended as an informational and entertainment purposes only. We specifically include responsible marijuana reform rights.
Listening to anyone but your mother is just plain stupid.
We accept no responsibility for your actions or misrepresentations, and we do not fully endorse the use of illegal drugs. You are ultimately responsible for yourself.
Live.